Do you feel frustrated trying to grow your franchise? Are you having trouble balancing your consumer and franchise development marketing? Do you wish there was an easier way? Imagine if you had a proven roadmap to take your franchise's marketing from costing you to making you money. That's why we've created the Franchise Growth Blueprint. We walk you through the exact same process that we use to run franchise marketing campaigns for our clients at scale that has resulted in triple-digit growth. This blueprint isn't for anyone. It's not for people just starting a franchise. It's not for franchises without long-term goals. This is for franchises that want to scale up their marketing in a predictable and profitable way using a proven roadmap. If you want to sell more franchises, keep your current franchisees happy, and learn from people who have already done it, go to franchisegrowthblueprint.com and sign up today. That's franchisegrowthblueprint.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Franchise Marketing Podcast. Today, I'm super excited. I have Andrew Carter from Bank of Montreal. He's the regional market leader for franchise finance. Andrew, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jordan. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you on. So you come from a very deep experience in the franchise space. Could you tell us a bit more about your background and how you're now working in the finance sector of franchising?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, so I did work for a fairly substantial franchising business that sells coffee and donuts for about 20 years. And my role there was to work, there was quite a few different roles I suppose I had, but ultimately I was always working with franchisees in some capacity, whether that was opening up a restaurant or advising them on a new equipment purchase or helping them improve service or cleanliness at the restaurant. So that was my main focus for pretty much the entire time. And a couple of years ago, I was approached by the Bank of Montreal when they decided that they wanted to do something a little bit different with respect to their industry programs. And really what they were trying to do is, and I remember in the interview at the time, they said, they're full of bankers. They want some people with some different types of experiences to be a part of their industry sectors. So there's the healthcare space, which has people that were kind of plucked out of different facets of the healthcare industry. And then the franchise space where we have quite a, I think we're all from the restaurant industry. And we have people across the country now that are in a similar position as I am, who are working with franchisees, working with franchisors, supporting internally what our commercial and our small business teams need with respect to information on any particular industry or franchise network, or they just have questions about how to approach a particular situation. And they look to us for that type of support. And so it was really kind of cool when I got the opportunity. I love working with small business owners. I've been doing it. Before that, I was with McDonald's. So I've been in the restaurant space my entire life. And I didn't necessarily want to get away from the small business side of things. But I also thought that, I think this is the time to make a change. And it all kind of has worked out, I suppose, and is working out. And it's exciting that we've made some great strides in the last couple of years since I started with the bank in 2018 on just solidifying, I think, ourselves as a bank that franchisees and franchisors want to deal with. And I think a lot of it has to do with some of the perspectives that we can provide that are outside of the banking industry. It's a little bit more of a real world type of, this is what you as a franchisee need to be more aware of. I think we're maybe a little bit more knowledgeable on the P&L side of things, just being able to, especially in the QSR space where a lot of us have our backgrounds, we really know what to look for and what we can hone in on and what's standard and what's not standard. And I think it's provided a lot of support back to all the different stakeholders that kind of play within the franchising space at BMO and beyond. So it's been great.
Very cool. Yeah, very, very cool and very interesting. So I'd love to hear, since you have that kind of inside track of, working with franchisors and, seeing the inner workings of the world of finance, what are some tips and insights that you can give franchisors when it comes to, financing and lending and how that plays into their growth and expansion?
Yeah, it's $1 million question, I think, because there are so many things that we pay attention to when we're looking at partnering with the client. And I think I choose that word partnering. Um, uh, uh, that's the way I want to sort of come across, is that we're not necessarily in a transactional type of situation. We really are seeing, and hopefully we are participating in the long or the length of the business, and being a real support mechanism for the franchisees. And I think that it's important that franchisors have a real good understanding of who the people are that they're bringing in. And we love franchising. The banks, I'll speak, for BMO, but I would say that all the banks, because we all have different elements of franchising that we participate in. We like for the same reasons that a lot of franchisees like it, is because it comes with the built-in support mechanisms that a franchisor brings. They've made some mistakes along the way that each franchisee kind of benefits from as they grow and as they develop and as they expand. And I think at the beginning, where we see, and I do some speaking with the Canada Franchise Association on people who are looking to take their business into a franchise model. I think really understanding who they bring on as the franchise is the most important element to the selection process. Certainly, the finances need to be there, but I think having the right person, and really, at the end of the day, the franchisee or the management of that business, the decisions that they make as a business owner affect everything else that happens, whether that's a hiring decision or a marketing decision, or where they choose to spend their money on equipment, or how they go about it. All of that comes down to the franchisee. I think having a good understanding, especially for an emerging franchise brand, of who they're bringing on, and I think they do need to fit into a particular. They have to align with the values of the franchise brand. I don't think they always have to agree on everything, but I think certainly a mutual respect for if there are any disagreements is important. And you see it in the news with different franchise associations throughout the world. I think that comes down to a lot of communication being lost, or something being lost in the shuffle. So I think having people that that you can get along with and have a mutual respect for is an important part of that piece. And I think at the beginning, particularly at the beginning, if you're relying on your franchisees to be a main part of the sell feature for future franchise sales, and that's one of the things that we suggest and we ask our franchise clients or potential franchise clients to do, is to validate what they've learned from the franchisor by talking to existing franchisees. So you really need to make sure that those initial franchisees are the ones that you also want to be selling your product or selling your brand to future investors or franchisees down the road. So I think having that and understanding, and I think one of the big questions that we suggest people ask is, of an existing franchisee, is when they're going through this validation process, is would you recommend this business to a relative, or would you recommend this business to a best friend? And I think that is telling for somebody who wants to get into the franchise business, whether or not this will be the right fit for them.
Totally. And you know what, you hit on a very important point, Andrew, because this topic I'm tempted to say has been brought up almost every episode, in that, you know, making sure you have the right people, like you're bringing on board the right franchisees, are absolutely crucial, not just like as an emerging franchise, but no matter what size you are. So that I'm
Yeah.
so happy that you brought this up as well, and that you're seeing it on your side. I'm curious, like what would you recommend, again, from what you've seen, um, to help attract and like to help attract good candidates?
That is a great question. I think there are lots of different um, places where people go to look for the information that they want in order to make the right investment choice. And so there are certainly different websites and different types of analytical tools that are out there. I think being it's tough to say. I mean, I see it in a lot of the sort of the niche businesses. Fitness comes to mind in particular, although it's going to struggle a little bit right now. But I've worked with quite a few brands who, in the fitness space, who have found that a lot of their franchisees, because they were customers first, and they just fell in love with the brand and the values of the brand, and they wanted to be a bigger part of it and take that concept and bring it back to their hometown or bring it back to wherever they think that there's an opportunity. It doesn't always mesh the same way in all of the brands. I would say that it doesn't, I won't say it's always the same, but I would say in many of the restaurant services, you don't always get that same level of passion from a future franchisee, but there needs to be a connection at some point. And so I think, and given my background with Tim Hortons and working with them for many years, I think one of the biggest success pieces was the franchisees' involvement in the community. And whether that was supporting a sports team or just being out at a local charity event or being a part of a bigger charity foundation like the Children's Foundation that Tim Hortons does sponsor, I think that all of those, being a part of the community, is a great way to solicit and meet new people who might be interested or have heard about a particular brand in the periphery but don't know a lot about it. I think the more that franchisees are willing to get out into the community and spread their wings that way, the better it is for the franchise brand as a whole. And I think that should be, as a franchisor, I think that should be something that they communicate and sort of endorse as a great, not only just a sales builder with their own business, but for the brand as well.
Totally. I like that. I like those tips a lot. So switching gears, you brought up a point earlier about you don't have the typical, finance banking relationship with the companies, well, with the franchises that you work with, right? Like it's more about partnering with them. So my question to you, Andrew, is, how can franchisors, I should say, develop and start a strong relationship with their, banking or finance partner?
We'll get right back to the show, but do you feel frustrated trying to grow your franchise? Are you having trouble balancing your consumer and franchise development marketing? Do you wish there was an easier way? Imagine if you had a roadmap to take your franchise's marketing from costing you to making you money. That's why we've created the Franchise Growth Blueprint. To find out more, visit franchisegrowthblueprint.com. That's franchisegrowthblueprint.com. Now back to today's episode.
It's a great question. And I think, and I'll go back to an emerging business who's just wanting to take their business to the franchise model. I think it's important for them to speak to the different banks that are out there and understand what their lending appetites are going to be in that particular space, and making sure that they have an understanding of who they can talk to at the different banks in order to have those extended conversations with their franchisees. But I wouldn't limit that to just the emerging banks. I think in COVID is going to likely change how different banks perceive their current partners, and there might be some changes in how much capital is going to be available for a particular industry. Some banks might say, you know what, we're not going to do anything in the hospitality space. We need to focus our efforts on this space or this space. And that might be, there's nothing wrong. I mean, the hospitality or the food service industry is going to be there, and there's always going to be a need for financing. It just might not be that particular banks or that particular area of opportunity for that particular bank. So I think having conversations and always maintaining a relationship. Mm-hmm. I can tell you during COVID, it was interesting because there were certain brands that would take it upon themselves to send us information about how they've been doing over the past few months, whether that was, percentage decreases or increases, or these are the number of locations that we had to shut down, or these are the COVID plans. These are what we're doing for safety for our clients, our franchisees, and our customers. All that came, if that comes unannounced or unasked for, I think they understand the value then of working with the banks. And I think maintaining those relationships the entire time, good times and bad, are going to help you. But I think ultimately, sometimes I guess where the rubber can hit the road is when there are bad times. How do franchisors handle those situations, COVID or not? If you have a relationship with a bank and a franchisee needs to get some additional help, or perhaps is going to default in a loan, what does the franchisor do to help that situation? Because what ultimately I think ends up happening is that the level of support for the next franchisee coming to the business may or may not be dependent upon that last situation that was perhaps a negative one, and how that franchisor handled it. So I think the more that they're able to step up, or at least be a partner with the banks, and having somebody that they can call and have these conversations with about a particular situation, or even just to say hi and to make sure that that they can let us know that they're still growing, or these projects have been put on hold, or something along those lines. I think maintaining those relationships in good times and bad are something that will help all of the franchisors as they either grow or maintain status quo, or whatever the case may be.
Awesome. So during our conversation so far, you've brought up emerging brands quite a bit. I'm curious, is there ever a time where it's too early for an emerging franchise to start to partner with a financial company?
No, Jordan, I don't think so. I think there's some things that somebody who's wanting to take their model to a franchise space, there are some certain things that they're going to have to do for sure. They certainly need to understand, because if they haven't, for example, built out a site in the last 4 or 5 years, they may not necessarily know what the going rate is for building a similar style location. So I think having those conversations are important, and then have that information ready to speak to the bank so that they know what to expect from franchisees coming in, that these are the requirements that they wish to have. But I think if you have those conversations with a banker at the beginning, you get the understanding, to my point earlier, about which banks might be of interest to helping them grow. And if you get a cold shoulder at the beginning from a particular lending institution, you may not want to send your franchisees there. But if you have a sort of a conversation that it seems like there might be a partnership involved with a particular financial institution, I think that sets yourself up for having more successful conversations, or having your franchisees have more successful conversations with the banks when they're asking for financing.
Totally. I totally get that. So, Andrew, one question I always like to ask our guest is, what advice would you give someone just starting out as a franchisor?
Hmm. Well, from a banking perspective, I would say um, speak to your home bank first because they're going to know who you are as a business, and you're already going to have that relationship. But I wouldn't limit it to that. I think in order to be successful, you're going to need to pull from a lot of different directions. And I think each of the banks, I certainly can speak to BMO. You know, we have people like myself who are in the position to have these conversations with emerging franchisors. So I think whomever you talk to or whatever bank you're with, I think asking to speak to somebody who's in the franchising space will sort of help to understand, you know, the different opportunities that are available to them, but also maybe can connect them to different people to set up franchise documents or, you know, whether it's point of sale equipment or whatever it is. I think we're in a position to help people, and not just at the beginning, but along the way as well. So that would be my advice. Would, you know, from that bank perspective, is to reach out to somebody as soon as they have the idea that this is something that they want to do, because we might be able to give them some advice and save them some money even along the way, and hopefully get them started on the right foot.
Awesome. So, Andrew, you've shared a ton of insights. Is there any question that I should have asked you that I haven't?
I don't know. I think it's the one thing that I'm glad that came up in conversation was the community involvement in people's businesses, and I think that I'm a big believer in that. So I think I appreciate, and certainly from the bank's perspective and the bankers that work with our individual clients, we're only successful, and I think the franchisor will say the same thing. We're only successful when the individual franchisees are successful. So keeping us involved along the way, and not just when you're in the process for getting financing, but even after the fact, stay in touch with your banker. There are going to be times and months and maybe even longer than that, that you don't necessarily have to speak to your banker. But I think it's important to just sort of reach out and let people know that this is what we're doing. And same to be said for the franchisor standpoint. You may not have had a whole lot of conversations with the particular bank over the last months or a couple of years, but I think as you grow, you're going to want to have to have multiple support mechanisms out there, and I think having different conversations with the different banks will certainly help. So I would probably say that to reinforce being out in the community, I think is important, and keep your banker involved, because, like I said, if we can go out there and help support you as a business by attending particular events, grand openings, charity events, whatever it is that you're doing, we want to be there to support you.
Awesome. Great insight. So, Andrew, we're coming up on the end of the episode. I always like to end it with something that I call the lightning round. So it's just a
Okay,
few fast-paced questions coming at you. Are you ready?
do it. I'm ready.
Awesome. So first question is, what is your favorite tool or app that you cannot live without?
LinkedIn.
Awesome. Second question is, what is your favorite book?
Oh, my favorite book. Oh my goodness, this is lightning round. I should have an answer on the top of my head. Tuesdays with Morrie is a great book that Mitch Albom has written that I've read a couple of times. So I go with that.
Sweet. All right. Who is a franchise leader that you look up to?
Oh goodness. Well, I grew up in the Tim Hortons business, and I think, in my opinion, I grew up with some of the best people in the food service business. And I've always admired the way that David Flanagan and Paul House have managed that company for so many years. So I'd use them as somebody that I look up to.
Awesome. Great choice. And Andrew, last question, I promise. Where can people
Yeah.
find out more about you and your company?
Well, you can certainly reach out to me on LinkedIn. My email is andrewm.carter@bmo.com, Or BMO does have a franchising page on their website, which is the general email box, but it would get to me eventually. So feel free to reach out through that and or through LinkedIn and connect with me there. And I'd love to hear from people.
Sweet. Andrew, thanks a ton for coming on the podcast. You shared a whole ton of information. I know our listeners are going to appreciate it.
Jordan, I love being here. Anytime you need me, I'll be here for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Franchise Marketing Podcast. If you found this episode useful, share it with a friend and subscribe now so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. And until then, happy marketing.